Stay right there. What are you waiting for? Kill them! Kill them both! No, wait a minute. Is it money you're after? I'll give you as much as you want.
May the saints forgive you, because I won't.
Haruspectra, why don't you introduce yourself, and for anyone who doesn't know who you are, and give us a little both lore and anecdote about music.
All right. So, well, thank you first and foremost for having me. This is my first podcast that I've ever done, so I'm just really pleased to be here. To give you a little bit, put things into context, I am one of the millions of anonymous accounts wandering and fluttering around on Twitter. I had a previous account that was called Vogel. And a lot of that, what it was put out there, was had a lot to do with the esoteric, had a lot to do with just um, people say that it was an aesthetics account. It really was not. It was just whatever came to me in the moment, and me just pouring out things that would come to me and visit me, and I would just put them out there. Simultaneously with that, I'm notorious, and I've always have been pretty notorious to have very strong opinions about various topics. And when somebody says something, I just have the tendency to respond, and I just plainly express my opinion. Not everybody is very fond of that output from me, but honestly, if you're going to spend any time on the internet and on Twitter, out of all places, you might as well have fun, right? You might as well just do whatever you want to do. I'm not there to please anybody else. I'm not there to create an image or to sell an idea of me. And pretty much that's what I did with Rav Vogel. And then I felt like it was a time to move on, and the name Haruspectra came to me. And that was it. I was able to get the at Haruspectra and then also the name. But then the Haruspectra is a little bit more mature, if you will. I'm still always going to have my style that is pretty much doing whatever the hell I want and saying whatever the hell I want to say. Notorious for having severe typos, but I'm not really concerned about that. Again, I'm not there to please anybody. And lately, I've been taking it to singing, and I've just been posting my songs over there and things that I like, things that I find interesting, connect with people that I find interesting. Yeah, basically, that's who I am on Twitter.
Well, I love that because it's a woman beyond convention, which obviously the show's very fond of, especially me particularly. As we talk about yoginis and dakinis and how they can be embodied in living women sometimes, especially when we talk about Buddhism. So, yeah, I'm a big fan of that being beyond convention. I would hope to think maybe I also can empathize or identify with some of those elements of being in the moment. Like, yes,
Yep.
there's an aesthetic, but sometimes you just have to say it and you use an aesthetic as a vehicle. At least I think you do that as well. And I also do that. So I very much appreciate that about you. And
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for coming on. And I am
Yes.
really excited because I think we'll have a great conversation. And
Amazing. I'm very excited about it too.
Well, since you brought it up, why don't we discuss a little bit about aesthetics and maybe your aesthetics now and how they've changed? Or, and as you said, and I respect that, that you don't consider it an aesthetic posting. I don't consider what I do an aesthetic posting either. I consider it just what I like. But inevitably, there is a bit of esoteric bro
Hmm.
coding, maybe we'll
Hmm.
say. And I think with you, there is a little bit, I don't want to call it something that you don't like, Haruspectra, but you can correct me. But I would say it's like a little witchcore, a little, it's a little, it has, there is something, but it's not Tumblr 2012 witchcore. It's like
No.
you as a thinking person, like thinking
Yes.
through the ideas.
Yes. So basically, it all comes down from an idea that is very close to my heart. I have backgrounds in philosophy. I have backgrounds. I found myself taking notes for a seminar on Kabbalah for over a year when I was 15 years old. My mom was very interested in Gurdjieff and Ouspensky, was very interested in Sufism, and all that came to me a little bit by osmosis. And pretty much what you see right now, it's a little bit of the result, a little bit of a result of all those influences in my life. Strong influence of opera, strong influence of just pursuit of beauty and finding beauty out there. I believe that the beauty that you find out there is a little bit of a reflection of something that you already know, that something that somehow lives within you. And to me, it's very important and always has been very clear that beauty is not this like soft, calm, perfectly balanced thing. There's an aspect of deformity, monstrosity, and a horror in beauty. So when you think about, so I always like to use this example. If you were like walking around and you stumble upon Venus, right, the most beautiful creature that you can possibly imagine, the kind of like the cardinal idea of beauty that regulates all things beautiful in the feminine and in general, you will probably feel horrified. You feel shaken to your core. And I think that is something that sometimes gets left behind. And to me, it's a little bit of a driving principle. And so sometimes the the seek of beauty, the seek of that truth, has to go down the path of the muddy, the gritty, the violence even. And I don't think there's any contradiction in all those things. Now, you were saying that there was a little bit of a witch core to my output, and I think that is just because being a woman and being very attuned to what being a woman is might create that idea. I feel like the feminine is obviously the one that is going to be more in touch with the intuitive, while the masculine principle is always going to be more rational, more orderly. And so I think that women in general, they have access to this underworld, if you will. Um, and you can become somehow a bridge between that and whatever is put out there. So in a way, many times, not all the time, but many times, it works like you work a little bit as a medium when you are transporting things from one realm to the other one. So that is basically the way I see it. And that is kind of like what interests me. I know many people are over there for various reasons. Some people are like really boring and they just want to talk about politics. And I mean, you do you. I'm not going to tell you what you do, but that doesn't interest me. I am only capable of talking and expressing whatever interests me deeply. And that might be just very niche. That might be something that not everybody can relate, and that's completely fine. And that's why I think I will always be a very small account. But ultimately, what I do, what you do on Twitter, to me, it's an exercise to try to bring light to certain ideas that you have, and you put them out there either in an image, you put them out there in a paragraph, you put them out there in a song, or something that somebody else posts that resonates with you. And all those things start creating a little bit of a tapestry, a little bit of a patchwork, a collage, when you grab different things from here and there and you put them together and you paint a larger, a bigger landscape. That's the best way I can explain it.
That was incredible and very beautiful. Thank you so
Thank you.
much for saying that.
Thank you.
Women are very Sephirotic. I've always said this.
Hmm.
They're less dense than men, right? They have
Hmm.
emptiness, natural emptiness. So they're
Hmm.
better at Sephira. And men, like you said, we're better at path working. We're just
Yeah.
better at the paths by nature because that's our nature.
Hmm.
So I agree with everything that you said. There's no contradiction for me either, especially with beauty or Tiferet, because I would see it in a more tantric way than necessarily Kabbalah. But it's both. It's the same. I consider it to be the same. And people
Yeah.
who listen to me on the shows or on spaces definitely know that that's my perspective. But the goddesses are very wrathful in appearance. So for me, it's no contradiction. So I agree with you that it can be horrifying. It can be um, based on a lot on perception,
Hmm.
like the light going out into the world. And I also like that you said that about Twitter and using words and images and also passions, like things you like, things you love, other people have written, and you put them out there and you kind of illuminate it in a subtle way. You try
Right.
to anyway.
Right. I and absolutely agree. To me, well, I told you that I studied philosophy, and one of the first moments when I realized that this idea was when we were studying Parmenides, and we were studying Parmenides in opposition to Heraclitus. So Heraclitus says that everything is a flow, and Parmenides says that completely the opposite, that whatever it is, it's permanent, it never changes, it never moves, it never begins, it never ends. And so I remember we were having kind of like they were having a heated discussion on how those two things were opposite. And I thought, and I raised my hand, I was like, I'm sorry, but I don't think that there's any contradiction. I don't think that those are two opposing forces. I think we are talking from two different standpoints of reality. And the fact that everything is a flow does not negate the fact that nothing ever changes, that there's something that always remains. We are just talking about different levels, and maybe that is just my mind doing crazy pirouettes, but I believe that reality is far more complicated than any explanations that we can give about them, that I can spend all the time in the universe to try to explain what reality is. But I believe that ultimately, what really is, what really exists, it only shows itself in the paradoxes. When you have an apparent contradiction, there's kind of like a wedge. So imagine that the world is this sphere, but there's some cracks in the sphere, and right where the cracks are at, there is where what it is hides itself. So to me, when I stumble upon a paradox, when I stumble upon a contradiction, when I stumble upon a yes and a no simultaneously, I fixate on that. And I think that there's so much over there waiting to be untapped, waiting to be uncovered and released. And I believe that one of the best ways to tap into this and to talk about this is art, ultimately. Painting, music, literature, because we are entering into the reality almost like a scuba diver, and we are not bringing with ourselves the tools that we use to measure things outside in the world. We're just immersing ourselves in a world that has its own rules, and we are subjecting ourselves to those rules. And we're gonna come out of it with something, a painting, a poem, an idea, a color, a stone. And we're going to put that out, and little by little, we're going to start unearthing what is in there.
I could not agree with you more. And you said something interesting before. I mean, everything that you say was interesting, but you said something about being a niche account, and I agree in the sense that this show is a someone called it esoteric deep cuts. So I don't. It's a great title, but I don't want to take it if I didn't come up with it. Right, not my
Hmm.
word. But yeah, that's I'm okay with that too. Like I'm comfortable with that. I'm like
Hmm.
I want to discuss these ideas, metaphysics, exactly what you're saying, meta reality,
Yep.
ontological ways of being in the world, not just ideological, post ideological, post
Hmm.
maybe even cosmological. Like
Yep.
you're saying, there's no perfect map of reality, and there isn't.
No, there isn't. There isn't. And I think the problem and the danger it is when we adopt a certain idea or a certain map and we claim it to be the ultimate map, the ultimate idea, and we refuse the movement. There's a very interesting book by Thomas Kuhn that is the structure of the scientific revolutions, and it explains that science comes with this certain ideas and explains reality and explains how things happen, but at some point those ideas, that thesis, it's not capable of explaining a new event, so it creates a moment of crisis in science, and we have to reevaluate our notions, our beliefs, and we have to start sketching and mapping out a different idea. I think that is something very healthy. I think is innate for humans and for the human mind to try to come up with that map of what there is out there. But we need to remain flexible and we need to be able to adapt and then introduce newer ideas. And then maybe, what I thought about yesterday is not what I think about today, and that is completely fine. Because I think the biggest dangers that we encounter as society, and as a humankind, is just to hold on to a given idea and to say, you know what, this is it. And if you don't agree with my idea, then there's something wrong with you, you know?
I completely agree. It's something that has been recently brought to my attention that I'm very flexible with frameworks, and I
Yeah.
am. And because tantra makes you flexible, because
Hmm.
when you practice text, sometimes the cosmology is not the same.
Hmm.
Sometimes they explain it's this deity and this deity, and yes, sometimes you can bring over things that you know, but sometimes it's almost like starting fresh.
Right.
So you have to be flexible. You have to be willing to change your perspective, your worldview, and also in the broader sense, you have to understand the world a little differently.
Yeah.
So I 100% agree, and I also think that it's so interesting that you brought up science and Venus. I know you brought up Venus a little earlier, but there, you mean Netzach, Venus, eternity? Of course, that is real. That is
Hmm.
very real. Like there is something primordially, quote unquote, true about the refraction of light through. I use the metaphor of a diamond, but I think that's
Hmm.
a rather good one
Yeah.
for Netzach anyway. And so that's primordially true. But then you also have to say, like, where is the light coming from? Like, where is the understanding coming from? Where is the sort of, and you're saying, like, we have to also pull it into that mercurial sort of like understanding the world, but maybe it's not deep understanding. Maybe it's reconstructed
Yeah.
understanding. And that's what art is. And I think that you touched on that 100%.
Yeah, and but I don't believe that there's one way of thinking things that is ultimately the only one. I think, and just like we were talking before, that the man is going to be more rational, is going to intend to create a little bit more of a structure, while the feminine is a little bit more chaotic, and it feels perfectly comfortable in the unnamed and the things that we have no concepts for. And so we can channel that energy in one way or the other. I think ultimately both energies need each other, in all different ways of explaining the world, in a way need each other to construct different levels of this thing that we call the world around us.
Absolutely. I mean, you're speaking my language, Haru, like 100%. Like this is very Aeonic. I'm not trying to put your words or your ideas into a box. I don't want to do that at all. But I'm giving a frame of reference that I have is like this very Aeonic thinking where we are in an unnamed or hidden time,
Hmm.
and as we move through this period of flux, as I call it, we have to be increasingly flexible because even though it is often said that the foundations of the world are stable,
Hmm.
we can perceive them as unstable or destabilized. So then the world acts sort of accordingly, according to our perceptions. It's one way to think of it.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, by being increasingly flexible with both our opinions, our kind of material sciences, and I'm not saying like discard all material sciences, but like you said, there's an element that needs reconstituting
Yes.
because institutional science is very superficial, very
Yes.
technocratic. And I've talked to Sochki about this, who's a physicist, and
Hmm.
this we both agree. It's like there's something that is superficial, that what happens behind institutional walls is very occulted to them,
Hmm.
to the public. And so I think there's something really interesting in what you said about having more of a public science, more people understanding like these are the general rules of the universe, or at least the ones we're thinking about and abiding by at this moment. And but then we're also going to like be flexible and also like do it for ourselves. It's more self-sufficient.
Hmm. Absolutely. I cannot agree more. And yeah, I think ultimately, whatever the world is around us, it is something that is out there, um, but it's something that is permanently created, is being created over and over again. Us interacting with the reality around us to a great extent creates that reality. I don't believe that there's such a thing as a world that is completely indifferent to my perception of it.
I agree with you. I think that it's both. I think they're both things are true. I think
Hmm.
that reality is mostly mind, but there's something other as well. And I don't think it's indifferent, and I don't think it's just subjective. I think there is something that is post-conceptual, maybe sort
Hmm.
of nature that transcends reality, transcends what we call, understand, name, try and contain maybe in frameworks, and maybe
Hmm.
that's that kind of wild and we'll call it Babylon nature
Hmm.
of a woman, is not of a woman per se, but of like the archetypal character, is that she loves material creation because it is also her child or her, depending on how
Hmm.
you think of it. But she also wants to experience the experiences beyond that.
Right.
So it's a paradox, as you said so
Yep.
beautifully.
Yep.
And I'm not like saying I'm the best Kabbalist, but as a decent one, at least I'd like to say that I try and resolve all paradoxes as best as I can in my mind. But there are the times where you have to just kind of breathe and let it go. So
Yes.
that's how I reconcile that one.
Yeah, 100%. And well, me personally, I don't have problem with paradoxes in at all. But I can recognize and I can understand how to certain people is something that they just simply cannot take, and they have to have it either one way or the other. So for example, the profile picture that I use is from the, what is it, the Franco Zeffirelli movie. It's the Virgin Mary, right? And you can say, how can you be using that particular image for an account such as yours? Because I don't see the problem with it. I'm not using the images to signify just one thing. The images that I use and that I pick them for personal private reasons, and like I said before, all those things make kind of like a composite a composition of different things, and they all together generate some music.
I could not agree more. I mean, color is a kind of music, aesthetics is a kind of music. It can all be obviously translated into different light can always be translated into waves and to
Hmm.
sound. So absolutely, it is kind of like a meta filmmaking. It is kind of like I I stole this from Zoomers, so I can't say I coined it, but the keynote posting shall continue, as they say, because yeah, it's very powerful. It's almost like it's a meta magic in and of itself. And then,
A
like you
hundred
said,
percent. And I appreciate the accounts that there's multiple accounts. I spend a great deal of time just picking images and telling stories through images. And some of them they don't even speak at all. And I find them super interesting. Just like there's so much over there, and you never know the reasons why a given image was picked by somebody, but you are going to receive it and you are going to complete it in your own world with your own meaning. And I think that is basically the success of any work of art, when the artist is going to put something out there, but then that is not going to be completed until the one perceiving it, the one listening to it, the one watching it, uh, introduces into their own lore, into their own folk, and makes it theirs.
well, that was beautifully said, and maybe a great place to sort of get into some questions about music and what drew you to that as a medium.
Of course.
And who are some influences that you think that you maybe not in your music, but of course that can be true as well, but just foundationally for you, like who are some people that you just really love? I know this is a very typical artist question, but I'm of course curious.
Well, it's very hard to pinpoint a one person. I don't believe that I have one person that has inspired me, or one person that I say, you know what, this is the all be all. There's a bunch of influences for me, and what I can say is that out of all the people that have influenced me the most are those artists that are not afraid of doing something different. It just because I was talking about him earlier, Peter Gabriel is somebody that has been a huge influence in my life. Somebody that just decided to go out there and do something completely different. That to me, it is something that I aspire to do my own thing. Um, Movie directors. Wim Wenders is one of them. There is a woman, Argentinian uh, woman that did poetry. That is, her name is Alessandra Pizarnik, and she wrote very much from the thorn, from the wound inside. And what I admired the most about her was just her capacity to grab all that energy, all that sadness or love or lust or hate, and use it to paint with those emotions and put something different out there that was not necessarily just like self referent, like, oh, I'm just going to talk about me and how miserable I am, but just to grab that wound, to grab that emotion, and to use it as a tool, as ink, to paint something.
It's very profound what you said. It's the ability to transmute, like alchemically,
Yes.
internally transmute through consciousness, but also there's an internal, like you even said it, it's the thorn. It's that, it's very Netzach, it's very Venus. Like I can see it in my mind, her, like very much. This red rose, and just like it's almost bloody. And
Yep.
it's like blooming outwards. And that's exactly what it is. And it's drawing that, it's that turning the, you could say the beauty of Netzach or the eternity of that in
Hmm.
her youth, highest youth, but you're kind of transforming that into the martial or Geberatic power, like the force. You're putting it
Hmm.
out into the world, and it's very dialectical, like you said. Like you have to be in subjectivity to really perceive what art is and to understand it. And I try and do it in a Kabbalistic way, or like a tantric way, or an esoteric way in general. But not everybody has those frameworks to reference, right? So then it becomes, how much do you then reveal? Like you're saying, like, can you make it, can you make the words transcend more than what you are and the way you are able to articulate them? I think that's a really
Exactly.
interesting paradox.
Because I mean, you can write, and I've written plenty. I just used to write in Spanish. But you don't want to talk about your biography, but you can use those experiences, and you can use them as colors to paint something with them. There's this very very talented gal. I believe she's from Germany, if I'm not mistaken. Her name is Anna von Hauswolf, and she does music with pipe organ, and it's one of the most striking things I have ever listened. And when you see her perform live, it is almost cathartic. She turns herself inside out. And as great as a musician that she is, I think a lot of the power of what she does, that obviously, I mean, for crying out loud, using a pipe organ, that in itself is so incredibly moving. But on top of that, the topics that she explores um, are so dark and deep, and she uses her experiences. I'm guessing, and she puts all of her out there. But it's not like she's talking about herself. She's using that experience of herself as another instrument to compose this music that she offers to the people that go to her concerts, that she puts in every single one of her albums. I just adore her. I think I found her like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, and that is kind of like the energy that I want to tap into, like the raw and bashful, unapologetic, honest output, where I am not putting boundaries, I am not putting a limit to the amount of energy that I can put out. I'm just letting it go out. As loud, as soft, as raw, as violent, as loving as it wants to. And I think that to me is something, when I think about of all the people that I have admired the most, that is what they all have in common. It's just like this really raw creation that just outpours like a cascade, and I appreciate that. I love that.
Well, I love that too, and thank you for that. The imagery is great. I do want to ask you about the power of the symbolic, I guess, and
Hmm.
like what you were saying, even playing into your former Twitter aesthetic.
Hmm.
Not necessarily that it was an aesthetic, but that you were drawing from a specific kind of pool of images, maybe because you're
Hmm.
interested in that, like you're thinking through those things, and so you're obviously it magnetizes to you. I totally get it, and but I think with lyrics you kind of touched on it, like you're kind of drawing in occult maybe or esoteric, maybe that's not the same thing per se, but it may be both. You're drawing in those ideas or that idea of like horrorcore or like the kind of like violence. It doesn't necessarily have to be embodied in violent lyrics, but maybe that is also true.
Yeah. Well, the symbols have always. I think we live our lives and we are exposed to various things, and in a sense, we get um these symbols, these ideas. They get inside of you, kind of like a seed, and then at some point later in your life, they start blooming, and they come back to you, and they start talking to you about certain things at certain given moments in your life. And and I there's not a method. It's just sometimes certain symbols come to me for some reason, and I just put them out because they came knocking on my door, and I'm gonna let them in. If I'm sometimes like, I don't know, wandering around or walking or driving, and I start thinking about the Yggdrasil, and then I think about the Yggdrasil, and then I think about the placenta, and then I think about the trees, and then I think about the roots of the trees, and then an idea of bloody roots coming inside of the earth. I'm going to speak about that. I'm going to find the images. I'm going to try to convey that idea and put it out. And I'm going to try to frame it as much as I can, surrounded by other ideas that sometimes can be a piece of a lyric, like a line on a certain lyric that it resonates with me, and it has something to do with that idea of the Yggdrasil, with the bloody roots down to earth, into the soil, you know. So I'm going to try to talk about that, but I think that when you try to talk about that and say, okay, let me put this better example. While I was at the university, I did philosophy, and I was interested in psychology, so I did a couple years of psychology, and I had to do a research on schizophrenia according to Feyerabend. And so I did my research, and I stood in front of everyone, and I was ready to do my thing. And then one of the girls raised a hand and was like, "Can you give me the definition of schizophrenia?" I was like, "No." So this one gal, she raises her hand and she's like, "Can you give me the definition of schizophrenia?" I was like, "No." There's plenty books at the library. You can go ahead and look for the definition of schizophrenia. That is not what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about how, according to this given thinker, schizophrenia comes about and what are the methods that schizophrenia uses, and how the goal of schizophrenia is to protect the self or the ego, whatever. And then that day, I understood that the definition world, it was just not for me. That is something that I'm not interested in. I'm not interested in the definitions. Especially when you talk about symbols, especially when you talk about these ideas, I don't think that there's a definition. I think we can approach it, um, and I can talk about my experience of that given symbol. And that is basically what I'm trying to convey, to do a little bit of the phenomenology, if you will, to put a name for something that most people would understand. I'm going to talk about my particular experience of that given symbol. How does it speak to me, and how I solve it out, and what are the keys that to me are important to place that symbol in this universe that is who I am, basically.
I love that because a lot of the question is, especially for like modern young magician, well, quote unquote young perspective, is this idea of will. Because I'm mainly a Buddhist, but I'm also like, maybe magic is that, but maybe it's Buddhist, or it's complicated sometimes. But
It is. It always is complicated.
right, but the reality is that the question in at least Western esotericism is the will, and I think what you're doing is really interesting from my perspective. So my perspective, Harvey, if you don't know, is that I've been sort of a dabbler for a long time in many different things, and I really loved chaos magic for a long time because I felt like it helped me break some early preconceptions that I had about the world. But it's not. I'm not married to anything. I'm
Yeah,
very, like I said, I'm flexible. So, um, no, I agree with what you're saying. It's like you put your will onto the symbol. So I
exactly.
appreciate that right out the bat because that's a
I
very
just,
chaos magic thing to do.
I don't think this. I mean, it's complicated. It's very complicated. I specialize in theory of knowledge and in phenomenology for the longest time, because the question is like, does is the object there, like what I'm seeing this chair, right? And does the chair exist on its own? I don't know. I can only tell my experience of the chair. I can only talk about that chair as I perceive it. Maybe the chair, and I'm putting the chair as a like whatever example, maybe the chair has like these, I don't know, multicolored wings that I'm not seeing because I don't have the organs to see it. Maybe what I perceive of the reality, what I see of the reality, is only the version that my body allows me to perceive. My psyche allows me to perceive. My experience, my sensibility, my own emotions allow me to perceive. So the only thing I can do in the most truthful way is to talk about that experience that I have. And maybe when you have a group of people enough that can focus and tell the story of these symbols, these ideas, and we can come up with something that is common in all those experiences. And that might tell us something about that particular symbol. But I think ultimately a symbol is over there as an invitation. It's an invitation to go in there, to go and find out. Again, like the crack in the sphere is an invitation to that crack and to dive into it and to fish in it and to see what you can find. And ultimately is your own experience of it, and you can share it, and you can share that illumination, if you will, that you got of a given symbol. But ultimately it would be hubris to say, oh, this is what it is. I don't know, especially when you're talking about the esoteric, because so much of what we understand or we think we understand about the esoteric has been passed on through generations, and so much of it has been lost. And so much of it has been misconstrued and misguided, if you will. So ultimately, you only have yourself and these symbols as keys, as doors, as invitations to dive and to find out yourself.
I mean, you're speaking my language. This is exactly what I do on the spaces with the. It's not just me, but it's like the Grey Lodge. It's all the boys who are co-hosts.
Hmm.
Like this is what we're interested in is like modern American magic, basically, like
Hmm.
meta magic, looking for like reconstituting, like you said, it from a degraded system. What do you make of it? What do you take of it? And sort of like putting it back together. And maybe that there's some ideas from like East Asia, and although it's been around for a while, obviously in academic circles, but now we have the internet, we have these like very dynamic dialogues like what you and I are doing right now,
Hmm.
and it's there's something extra, there's kind of an extra pool of magic to draw from, you could say, by putting it on recording. It makes it electric. It putting it onto the internet through our phones as something, or our computer or whatever it is, but like Black Cube, you're putting that energy in. And so I think that yeah, I mean, you're speaking my language 100%. It's about sort of open, giving people the keys without putting your own preconceptions onto it,
Exactly.
right? You don't want to put klipas in front of people. I always say this to
Yeah.
the boys. It's like you don't. There's karmic implications to doing that, and also like who are you? Exactly what you said. Like who are you to tell someone what it is? Because there are other interpretations. Now, of course, as a Buddhist, we would say, in a phenomenological terms, is that all existence is inherently empty.
Hmm.
So we answer that question very easily. That's what everything is. So
Yep.
no big deal. Um, but I think it's very, very important what you said is like there's so much of reality that is relative truth, and so that can really only be understood from the subjective position.
Exactly. Now, I know that many religions they have their own dogma, and I think that is the main reason why I don't commune with any religion in particular. I see myself as a very, very spiritual person. That is something that is has always been that's just who I am. I remember ever since I think somebody posted the other day was like, what kind of religion you would have been if education or the influence of the environment of your parents would have not existed. And I was like, I would have been some sort of like spatial or cosmological, I don't know, pagan or something like that. I will always, I since ever I was little, was looking up at the sky and looking up at the stars and wondering why I didn't fall upwards. Like, why am I not falling upwards? I should be falling upwards. I think it makes no sense that if I fall downwards. I should be falling up. Um, and it just comes from a very personal experience, and to me the spirituality is something extremely personal, and I don't have a name for my variety of my flavor of spirituality. I can relate to many things, in things that some people would say, whoa, but this is completely the opposite of this other. Okay, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. I don't see the problem with that. I think that as long as you feel something and something resonates with you and you are able to speak of that experience and you are not imposing that experience on anybody else, it's completely fine.
I mean, I agree with you simply because like we can never really control what anyone else
No.
thinks or even speaks, especially internally, and nor should we ever seek to do that. So I agree with you 100%. Is that even though I'm a Buddhist, I don't expect anyone else to follow the Dharma. I think it's nice if they do, but do as I will, I guess. And
Yeah, do as you will.
that's what I always say
Yep.
in the spaces because yeah, I mean, I can't control outside of my own
No.
sphere of influence. So I
Yeah.
agree with you.
And especially in the Twitter experience, like you don't
Exactly.
know what you become through the eyes of other people, and you cannot control that.
Mhm.
And that is true about Twitter, and that is true about the real life, the everyday life. You don't know what you become once the other person listens to you, and for better and for worse. And I think many times it's for the better. Like you put all these things out, like even the images that you pick, and sometimes you write something about it and it really hits people different ways, and it comes so much as a blessing to me personally. It's so refreshing to see somebody that is alive there, processing the world in their own terms and just putting out the result of a internal process of you interacting with the world around you. And I really appreciate that. I can see the honesty of it. I can see how genuine it is. And I noticed immediately the first time that I came across your account, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fucking awesome. I love it. Because ultimately that's all that I ask. I just want to interact with people that are honest. I I don't care if you're right or if you're wrong.
Mhm.
I care if you're honest, if you truly believe what you're saying, and that whatever you say is interesting to me. Because there's a lot of people out there that say whatever they think it is, but it's like I have no interest in what you're talking about, so I check out. You don't have my attention. I'm sorry. But if it resonates with you and if you learn something and it gives you something, it makes your life better in one way or the other, then that is great.
Well, first of all, let me say that's very high praise. Appreciate that greatly. That's I'm very flattered. I'll try not to be a great egoist about it later, but maybe a little. Um, no, so thank you. And also, I agree with you. And I think that the whole thing of the earnesty writing was maybe like how I don't know, you can respond to this, but maybe like how you release music. I thought I have all these thoughts that I've had for decades, maybe like my whole life.
Hmm.
And they've changed. Obviously, these words have changed.
Hmm.
And maybe this is like a good experiment or speculative kind of process, speculative writing project that I can undertake that is just free. I put it into
Hmm.
the world. It's totally free. Yes, I can delete the tweet. I usually don't, though.
Hmm.
And even
Yeah.
if I'm embarrassed, even if I don't really like it, even if I have spelling errors that are very immature or I hate them,
Yeah. I mean, who
let it go.
cares?
That's right. Just let it go.
I was having like a little bit of a frozen time when I was like, I don't want to record any other songs. They're just terrible. So many of the notes are flat, and people were like sending me videos how to avoid to do flat notes, and I was like, great. I just sing like shit. And I was like, you know what? It's not like I'm getting paid for this. I do it because I want to. And if people don't want to listen, then well, so fucking be it. It's fine. You don't have to listen it. To me, as an exercise, you asked me a little bit ago how I came about singing. I always like singing. In a perfect world, I would have been an opera singer. That would have been so cool. I would have loved to do that. But last year was a very difficult year. I feel like there's a cycle, and I'm sure you are very well aware of this. There's certain cycles in life, and I hit the one last year where I thought this is the one. This is the one that is going to break me. I don't think I have it in me, and I am very resilient. I'm a person, a friend of mine used to say that I should probably use my life to write several books and some encyclopedias and some treaties of this or that and several poems because I have so many stories. And I can say that when I look back at my life, I was like, damn, yeah, I've certainly survived many things. Um, and it's kind of like the image, right, of the girl walking down the street and there's a piano that is falling, and the piano is about to fall right on top of her head, and then I take one step and the piano falls behind me. That is kind of like an image that describes very well my life. I've always thought that I have either a guardian angel or a big providence that I have kept on their toes and has always saved me just by a hair, just by a hair. And living that kind of life can be exhausting, but you're like, you know what? I can pretty much deal with anything. But last year was the time when I was like, I can't. I don't have it in me. I just, it's just too much. It's just a one after the other. I cannot do it. And one day I found myself sitting at the balcony and I just grabbed the phone and I just started singing. And then the songs, the lyrics of the songs, I grabbed the phone and I found myself recording because I was so overwhelmed. And though the lyrics of the songs were not pertinent at whatever I was experiencing that moment, I realized that in the exercise of pushing the air out of me and try to reach certain notes, I found release and I found it soothing. And I took it just as a means of survival, if you will. And then little by little, I just started doing it because I like doing it and it just made me happy. And I was able to convey in some way some more of these things that I put out. It's not necessarily the lyrics, it's not necessarily the the music, but there's something that is being conveyed out of it that comes from deep inside of me because obviously you're pushing the air out, right? That is the soul, that is the anima, that is what you're pushing out. So yeah.
I mean, absolutely. That's the ruach. That's the, rule of the universe. It's the
Yep.
breath of
Yep.
God's wife, you could say.
Yep. Yep.
So, okay, so that was really fascinating. Thank you very much for saying that. I agree. Sound is very clarifying. It's very purifying. It's very powerful.
Hmm.
The vehicle for many amazing and horrendous also things. So
Yes.
perfectly said. Um, so I have three kind of they're not closing questions, but we can just kind of like broadly go with them as much as you want. But I have three questions from your kind of Twitter persona,
Yeah.
who you
Go
are.
ahead. Go ahead.
Swimming. What
Hmm.
is it about swimming that particularly you find, I don't know, whatever you find about it?
So when I was a little girl, I was one of those those kids. You know, they call them that they have the shining. Um, I was one of those little kids. I was born at 7 months. They had to pull me out of the wound, and my mom had a liver condition that she didn't know that she had, and I was drowning in the womb, basically. So when I was like 2 years old, I started talking very early, and I was going around saying that in my previous life I had died drowning. Later in life, I was terrified of the water, absolutely horrified, and constantly I was having nightmares of drowning, nightmares of the deluge, the flood, a tsunami, all sort of visceral nightmares around drowning. One of the worst ones was I was in some sort of like imagine one of those Greek islands with the tiny little white houses, and I was at the top of the mountain, but the flood was coming from up down, and it was nothing but blood and parts of animals. And so these were very repetitive all throughout my life, and it was very crippling. It was very crippling. I would constantly wake up crying and pretty much just like making going to sleep a misery. And at some point in my life, I was like, you know what? I'm tired of this. I need to grab the bull by the horns and I need to turn this around. And so I decided to take swimming lessons. And I learned to swim. And I realized that swimming was absolutely wonderful. And I love doing it. I think there's something about the water that speaks very deeply to me. I think there is something that my spirit, my soul finds over there, something that at some point was a source of nightmares, was a source of fear, was a source of horror, if you will, that it's not like I transformed this monster and made it seem less frightening. It's just we came to terms. And the monster, if you will, um, became a friend that nourished me and fills me with energy when I need it. So that is what I find the most about swimming. There's something about hearing the churning water in my ears when I dive, when I turn around, when I do a flip. There's something that my soul finds over there that fills me and gives me something that nothing else does.
Well, again, you're speaking my language, Haru, because I am a Kenneth Grant enjoyer as well. So, definitely, and even Tantra accounts for everything that you said, and I won't even go into it, but it is very interesting because, of course, the water can be. Some people believe it is a vehicle for both the word, but it is also very primordial. So
Yeah.
it can also be sort of extremely wrathful. Figure or like archetypes, and also populated by a dragon is that
Oh, yes.
primordial ocean. So very interesting. Okay, so my next question or lore fact is accent.
Oh, my accent. Oh, well, I
It's an
speak
amazing
Spanish.
accent. It's an amazing
Oh,
accent.
thank you. Thank you. I speak Spanish, and but curiously enough, so I'm Chilean, right? And but my mom put me in a French school, and so in this French school, Alliance Française, when you start, you have to start when you're 3 years old. And I told you I was one of those kids, and I was like, oh, kind of like I, um, I don't know, like healing with my hands, foreseeing the future, or like, hey, I lost this. I was like, oh, it's in the car, but we don't have a car. But it's in the car. You're gonna find it. It's in the car. And my mom would be like, what are you even talking about? And then us walking around, and then this guy from a taxi coming out, hey, ma'am, you left this in my car last week. So my mom was like very confused about me. So she shoved me into school when I was 1.5 year old. So the first language that I learned to speak was French. So basically, you can say that my first language is French, but it really isn't because if you don't practice it, you kind of lose it. But yes, I have the capacity of singing in French because you kind of like never lose the muscle capacity, the vocal muscle capacity to make those sounds. But yeah, so yeah, I speak Spanish and French and English.
Well, thank you for clarifying that, and I have to agree with you that when you don't practice, like I'm supposedly multilingual myself, so
So what
when
language do
you
you speak?
well, supposedly French, Mandarin, and Bahasa,
Oh
but
wow.
if as you said, if you don't practice them,
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes rusty.
yeah, French I've yet to practice because I live around a lot of French-speaking people, but
Nice.
my
Well,
mom is French, so
oh, well, then there you go. But to me, for example, what I try to do, I try to listen to French music that I actually quite enjoy. Watching French films that
mhm.
sometimes can be a pain in the ass, but I watch them either way, just to try to get my ear accustomed to that.
No, that's beautiful. I agree, and French films are quite good. Although I'm not, there's a whole subsection of Twitter that really loves those. Long list of amazing French cinema, but I'm just more of a Hong Kong kid, really at heart. So that's
Nice,
really what the stuff I like.
nice. So what are your favorite films?
My favorite films, so it changes. I think I'm like you in a way. I have a dynamism, I think,
Hmm.
internally, and it's more about what I'm focused on rather
Hmm.
than what's my favorite. Sometimes my favorite changes, but I will still have maybe perennial favorites. So
Hmm.
one of my favorite films is Duel to the Death.
Which one is it?
It's called Duel to the Death.
Okay.
It's from 1979, so it's a mixture of Chinese sword fighting, like Chinese
Uh-huh.
martial arts, magic, of course,
Uh-huh.
and also Japanese chambara cinema. So it's
Oh
a
my
samurai
gosh.
film, but it has like these more magical, and it's very stylistic. It's like quick cuts and like
Yeah.
flying all over, very abstracted almost, and it plays a lot with the light. So it's very, as the kids would say, it's very kino.
All
And
right.
so there's a Kabbalistic quality almost, or maybe even more broadly, like a divine quality to the way the
Hmm.
light plays through in the film, and so it's very interesting from that perspective. But it's about Buddhism, it's about Taoism, it's about like the sort of realities of the warrior's life and the man and the hero's archetype and the anti-hero. So it's
Hmm.
a culmination of that, and of course, it's because it's Chinese. It's very fatalistic, and everybody ends
Right.
up dead. So but there's a kind of beauty in it because
Of course.
that's a much more Chinese kind of worldview, is that fatalism. So that's a really great film. I would say that's a top one. Maybe one of my old favorites that I've been revisiting is a film called Azumi. So it's a
Hmm.
Japanese film, and it's about a young girl who's a samurai, or she's an assassin, and she's trained by this. I guess he's like a kind of magistrate to this samurai king, or something like that, like a shogun, and he's supposed to train these orphans to slay this other lord. And so it's like that kind of story. It's like a vengeance story, and it's very early 2000s. It's like has magic, it has like metaphysical themes.
That is wonderful. That is right down my alley. So I would love to watch them both.
Okay, great. Well, you should, because I highly recommend both of those.
Yes.
Okay, and I have a kind of interesting question.
Okay.
Okay, you've touched on it the whole discussion, which I think is useful, and you don't have to necessarily retread as much as or as little as you want. But like, I want you to discuss the bitch archetype because I think it's important for people to hear in a kind of post discourse world.
The what archetype?
The bitch archetype.
Oh, the bitch archetype.
I
Okay.
kind of think that we are moving into an era, or an aeon, you could say, that it will be a lot more important to be assertive and also set very clear boundaries with people. And so I think it's actually metaphysically useful, if you don't mind me kind of playing off of that, for you to embody like what you think those qualities are.
I think, well, it to me is a little bit of a touchy subject because one of the multiple things that happened last year was I am very direct. And I am not really great at sugarcoating. I can be very courteous. I think I am quite kind, but I just don't do well the politics of the human relationships. I'm not going to smile at your face and tell you that you're my favorite person and then just backstab you. I'd rather be told to my face that I'm a bitch. Like, you know what? I think you're awful. I don't like you. And if you tell me that you don't like me and you think I'm awful, then there is something that we can either work on or part ways. And it's completely fine. We don't need to like each other at all, but we owe one another honesty. That's at least the way that I see it. I am always perceived as somebody that is very competent, very direct, and kind of like on the go. So I don't really have time. I never feel like I have time for like the nuances of the tiptoeing around people. And I think it's okay. to be that way. I don't think there's anything wrong to be that way. And I think to a great extent it's necessary to be that way. Um, I believe that many of the trials and many of the bad situations that we face are because we try to be too accommodating. We try to, I don't want to hurt your feelings. I want to make you feel good. And it's all the realm of the feels. And for that reason, we allow people to do things that we don't really want and we don't really like. And we are afraid of saying no. Or we're afraid of saying, go fuck yourself. I think there's something very releasing, something very refreshing of saying, you know what? With all due respect, go fuck yourself. Because this is my will. This is who I am. I am not embarrassed of what I am. I am not ashamed of what I am. I am not ashamed of my opinions. And I believe the things that I believe wholeheartedly. And I'm giving you the grace of telling you that, of showing you that. I'm showing you an aspect of who I am. And though it might seem harsh and it might seem violent, it is ultimately a gift because I am allowing you to decide for yourself how far or how not you want to come and where do you stand in regards of this that I am and this that I think. um, when I see a little bit of a tendency of like the trad girls that want to go down the route, and there's nothing wrong with that, but there's nothing wrong with being the wife of. There's nothing wrong with taking care of the kids. There's nothing wrong with like watching over the home. But as a woman, you have to be fierce. You have to be a she wolf. You have to assert yourself because every time that you don't, you put those that depend on you in danger. And you need to draw a line and say, this is as far as you go. And you don't come an inch further than there. And if that is to be in a bitch, that is absolutely fantastic and that is great. Because we need to show the fangs, because we value, and because our core is tender. I'm not going to let anybody trash with that tender core that I have, that I reserve for those that I love, or for my moments of privacy. And I can invite people to share a little bit of that tenderness, but that tenderness means nothing if there's no fangs defending it. That's, there you go.
Beautiful. I mean, I think you may know that I'm a big fan of Vampirella. So the references to fangs and the
Yep,
sort of
yep,
violent beauty, the
yep,
violent perfection, you could say. I
yep.
do love that imagery. I'm a big fan of that. So thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah,
And
and also I don't think I think going back to the idea that we stated initially, there's no beauty without fangs. When you think about Venus, Venus is a sea monster. And the beauty that doesn't have any fangs is just going to be abused over and over again, and then that purity of that beauty is going to be tarnished. So it needs to be safeguarded, and it can safeguard itself. There.
well, maybe the perfect sort of end note, and you can decide if you want to field this or not. I'll leave it at your discretion.
Yeah.
I saw you had a recent tweet about the state of the Twitter quote unquote discourse.
Ugh.
So does that sum it up? Is just uh,
It is incredibly boring.
mm,
When I joined Twitter, I think it was when they announced that Elon Musk was gonna buy it, because silly me, I had the idea that whatever. But I was like, you know what? This Twitter doesn't seem to be like a liberal hive anymore, so maybe I can jump back in. And I joined, and there was so much going on, and there were people doing things, and there's still some people doing things. I mean, Drew Panoply is one of them. And there's a lot of people still doing things. You are doing things. There's many accounts that are still doing things, but I feel like it was much more effervescent. There was a lot more going on, and you could draw. I saw myself as a kind of like an echo chamber of everything that I was taking in, and I would bounce back of one tweet or one idea and the other and come out with something else. And I felt like it was something that it was done by a group of people. And sure, probably I was one of the loudest voices, but because I was feeding on whatever was being put out, and there was so much, and little by little it's turning in just this political thing. Well, all we talk about is politics and Trump and this and that and the other. And I'm like, the Epstein files, I'm like, it's fine if you guys want to worry about that and want to spend your time on that, go ahead and do it. It's just not for me. It's just not what interests me. I don't feel excited. I don't feel stimulated. My brain doesn't feel stimulated by that. And I am a person of I feel most alive when I have very strong emotions, strong ideas, things that I find intoxicating. That's what I kind of, that is my opium. That is my drug. Intoxicating ideas, intoxicating notions. I love that. And that's where I'm at my finest. And I think that I have nothing to bounce back lately. It's just sterile. It's just a bunch of political posts that do nothing for me. And at the end of the day, I feel like all of that is going to be gone in a couple of years, and then we're going to be bitching about something else. And I'm not interested in the bitching fest and the complaining about the state of the world. I am more interested about drawing new things, creating new worlds, illuminating, painting the world with other colors, and give something to the people and to people in general to feel excited about, something that you find refreshing, something that you find effervescent, something that you find interesting, erotic, stimulating. I am interested in that. And just frankly, the discourse lately is just so sterile.
I agree. Thank you so much for saying that. That was so illustrative and allegorical. I appreciate that. Um, I 100% agree. It's just like we're in I call it a smoky time. If you
Yeah.
follow me on Twitter,
Yep.
um, that's what it is. And so it's up to us to what we make of it, I think. And I think your
Yes.
color analogy is perfect. It's like what colors we put onto that sort of
Yeah.
like gray, smoky world. So I
It,
agree.
and it's like we're all like there's a movie that I think is called Up. It's like a cartoon movie, and there's a little dog when they see a squirrel, 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 and they're chasing the squirrel. It's like that. Everyone on Twitter is like that. Squirrel, squirrel. They all run. And it's like they have this thing dangling in front of you, and all of you go following there, and all of you go following the other way. And what you do is being dictated by the new thing that we're supposed to be outraged about. And I refuse to live my life at the rhythm of somebody else, even if that somebody else is just like an anonymous or just like a, I don't know, like collective unconscious. I don't know. I refuse to live my life based on somebody else's rules. I am interested in my rules, and I am interested in cooperation, in collaboration to create something, to give something, something that we can that doesn't exist and become to being when we interact with one another, and we can leave things behind, certain posts, certain songs, certain images, certain poems, as a testament of a moment in which we connected with each other and we created something that wasn't there before we came in contact. That is what I'm interested. I'm not interested in the politics game. Not at all.
I totally agree. Aeon of the daughter.